we're going to invite Andy to come up with us in just a moment. Andy, I'll invite you to come up. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, John. Hey, up in the tech booth, can we put the 5 things back up on the screen? Are we able to pull that back up? Because that would be all thumbs up there. There we go. There's 4 of them. There's, Yeah,
humble.
They knew that was the one I was worst at, so they weren't going to put that one up for me, which I really appreciate.
You learned humility along the way. You know what I'm saying? It's a process. It's a process.
Yeah. Well, every day. So, John, obviously, a lot of stuff that you shared this morning around innovation. I think that these 5 points that you've been. Did you just finish your doctoral work?
We did, yeah.
Are you
Graduated
Dr.
in May.
John?
Doctor.
Dr. John.
Dr. John.
Dr. John. Yeah. So
I'm a big Julius Erving fan. He plays basketball for the Sixers back in the day. So I like that.
I know
Dr.
about
J.
that. Yeah,
Dr.
sports.
J.
Yeah.
I don't have the fro, but
I know so much about sports. I understood. I got that reference right away. Yeah.
It's a game you shoot into a basket. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. There were people who did it in school. There we go. We put doctor on. So, John, was there anything that you expected to see in the qualities that you expected in sort of innovative pioneering leaders that you didn't end up seeing, but you thought were going to be there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of this is because sometimes we take our cues from the world. So we hear these stories in business or in finance or in tech industries of sort of like what I described earlier as that maverick, independent-minded, somewhat arrogant, we're just going to do this if we work hard enough mentality. And that might work in the world, but when it comes to spiritual innovation, like innovating in a way that lasts with people that are drawn to that, I expected it to be more that. We have this image of the apostolic maverick on horseback, me against the world, whatever it is. And instead it was this not totally different picture, but slightly different picture of, no, it's a person that really has an idea that God is burning in their heart to reach lost people, and they're not willing to back down. They just keep persevering in it. So yeah, it was a little different. We interviewed 70. Obviously, we had a bigger sample size. I just couldn't get through everyone. And there's definitely some of that demographic. You saw some of that, but by and large, this was the best composite. And then one of the things that was kind of interesting, and we had a lot of different questions we would ask, but it seemed like community was a big spiritual discipline, staying in Christian community for pioneers. And again, you're kind of modeling that, but there's some people think a Lone Ranger mentality with a lot of pioneering leaders and innovators. And we actually found that that wasn't the case, that most of the most effective pioneers had close people around them. Because, you can start something kind of like a firework, boom, and then whatever happened to, Mark or John or whoever. I don't know, it was really cool for a while, but then something happened, and we see the carnage of this, right? The independent person, they try to do their own thing, they don't have accountability, they don't have people around them, there's no community, they go through a hard time, they fall, they struggle, nobody ever hears from them again. Hey, whatever happened to that one person? And so I think community was another thing I wasn't expecting. I don't know, those are a handful.
Oh, that's really good. None of us who are in the Twitch space and online gaming space are unfamiliar with the story of the pop-up streamer or the pop-up organization that was everywhere and on every streamer's tongue and was a graphic on a bunch of things. And then 2 weeks later, we were like, whoa. What are they doing?
Yeah.
What happened, right? And I've said for a while, if you are in this space longer than a year and a half, you feel like a grizzled vet. Like,
Yeah, totally.
And you're not. You're still an infant and you're trying to figure everything out. And I think every one of us in this room, we would be able to, even those of us who've been in the space long enough, like I know Matt and Amanda well enough to know, like even as GSC and XP Church, like they've been in the space some of the longest. They know a lot more than a lot of us in the room. And I think even at the same time, you guys would say confidently, like, yeah, we're always learning new things as well. Like it's never a thing that we have figured out. And yet it seems though, if you're in it for any length of time, man, you can really feel like I've been here forever and I've been around the block, because things do seem to crop up and disappear. One of the reasons that we have been working towards starting networks at the ministry collective, the Nerd Culture Ministry Collective, was to help people get into context of community, get people in accountability, get them talking about when life sucks, when things aren't going well, when things are tough, that way when you take a break from doing the thing that you're doing because you're feeling burnt out, you have people around you reminding you how important it is that you were doing that thing and you should get back to it. Otherwise, it's just too easy to just not do it.
And that goes back to the humble confidence. I mean, these 5 were distilled with, like, we had all 70 did interviews with. We interviewed their mentor, we interviewed a peer, we had a lot of data, so we were trying to look at all the different data points. I mean, there's thousands of them, and categorize them. And it wasn't just humility, self-deprecating, I'm a loser, I'm terrible. Not that kind of humility, which probably isn't humility in the first place, but it was a humble confidence. Like, I'm confident in my idea and who God's made me to be, but I've also been broken and know I need to be humble. And I think that showed itself in, honestly, mutual accountability is submission, really, if you think about it. Like, if I'm really going to be accountable to you, I have to be willing to submit to you in my life. And I think that's what we saw in a lot of these ministries. And what's cool about this kind of an environment is you have that, because each of you are coming from your own areas with your own ideas and dreams, and you're able to sharpen each other. And I'd encourage all of you to be a part of these networks, whatever they are, because it's big. Yeah.
Well, I think that arrogance is the natural outpouring of insecurity inside of leadership, and humility is the natural outpouring of confidence inside of leadership. And, I think that it's really cool that there's a big difference between those things and the way that they expose themselves in the way that you talk about people. It's not that people aren't sure that this is a calling that God has put on their heart. It's not people that aren't sure that what they're doing is the right thing and that they're in the right place, but there's no need to make sure that everybody else feels like crap around them in order to reach and fulfill that insecurity. Obviously, all of us in the room have encountered that in one form or another, whether that was a general manager at a shop we were working at through being in ministry. I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have a question you want to ask or something you want to dive into with John? Yeah, Boots. I'm going to reiterate that so the stream can hear it. Boots asked, you talked a lot about the need to be inside of community as a live streamer and missionary. It can be easy to adopt a lone wolf mentality. You've noticed that a lot of these people had teams and community around them. Were those similar? Did each person have you could identify the archetypes of the people that were inside of that community that were important to them? Or were those communities really diverse and different looking?
Yeah, it was pretty diverse and different looking because we had a lot of different types of innovators. It wasn't just every demographic of people and every application of how they were ministering looked different. So the way that they function with accountability, I think, looked different as well. But what we did find is that, so in order for these 70 to be part of the research, somebody had to call them effective based on the criteria. So they'd have someone kind of in leadership over them, like a mentor or a denominational leader, network leader, to say, yes, they are. They also had to have a number of peers say that they were also effective. So it's possible we eliminated some people through the criteria. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because they had to have that built in from the beginning. I would almost say it doesn't have to always look the same, but you need to have a few people around you that are in your corner. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd also say your impact while you're live is almost always a correlation between your impact while you're live can only ever be as good as the times that you're not live. And so if every portion of your life is just trying to broadcast, and you're never taking any time to, what does it look like to be, I'm taking a break off of stream to meet with this group of people for accountability, so I'm not streaming this day, or I'm taking a break from making this content because I want to make sure that I'm walking closely with the Lord, and I'm in a community, or I'm in devotion, and I'm walking close with the Lord. That time spent not online. Well, God can do far more with the time that we give him than we can do by supplying all of it. Like, we can pour hours and hours and hours in, and God can do more with just an hour of our time, in my experience. And so, yeah, finding that balance is not always easy. One question back here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the question was, inside your research, did your research have the ability to span across cultures as we go outside just the U.S. For innovative leaders, and then also gender? Was it men and women that you were, experiencing and surveying through this?
Yeah. So, the parameters, got to narrow it down for the doctoral stuff. It was not global. It was just North America. It was basically the largest microchurch networks. So Tampa Underground, Kansas City Underground. There were 3 or 4 of them. And then I'm ordained Wesleyan, so it was kind of the Wesleyan Free Methodist, Nazarene, Church of God Anderson, Missionary Church, those 5 tribes. The male-female breakdown it ended up being 65-35, but once 65 male, 35% female. But once you bring in the data points weren't tied to gender necessarily. So it kind of, we weren't trying to do the research around differences in gender as much as just cumulative. Yeah. It would be interesting though if it was different tribes, because those 5 denominations are kind of more of like a holiness background, certain flavor. The microchurch networks could be unique, but yeah. So this is just what we found with that. Yeah.
We'll take one more over here, and then we're going to ask Andy to come up. The question was, in the passage with Jesus turning water into wine, did Jesus go against God's plan when he said, "Woman, my time has not yet come," and then he goes and makes the wine anyway, or was that within God's plan?
Yeah, I think I don't think it went against God's plan, but I do think that Jesus was in perfect fellowship with the Father, and I think at each point of the way, he was listening to the Father for guidance and direction. And so that statement, the way I've always understood it, was the Father and the Son moving in a new vein to reveal himself in that way. So that's how I interpret that. And I think theologically, it's interesting that the very first sign in John is this sign of Jesus being this abundance, messianic abundance, is kind of that something new is happening, radically different than the old. And so I think for that reason, it's super impactful to me. But yeah, it's a confusing passage, but that's how I've always understood that. Yeah, good question, man.
You even got a chance to flex your pastor hat.